Hey guys, it is Tyler here, back once again with another video, and today we're talking about my top 10 games of all time. Now, I have done a video about that exact topic probably about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now, except that top 10 list has changed dramatically. 5 different games dramatically in that top 10 list. So I thought, let's talk about it. I love talking about games and I love ranking shit. I like making lists, so I thought let's do my top 10 favorite games of all time, and there's been quite a dramatic shift in my top 10 list. Definitely worth making a video again. In fact, people that know me really well probably think they know what my top games are going to be, including number 1, even number 2. However, I had to have a real deep think about this list and what the top 10 favorite games of all time means. Is it the top 10 best games I've ever played? No. It's the top 10 favorite games of all time, and of course this is biased to my personal opinion and my experiences playing these games and what these games mean to me. So the way I'm ranking this is the 10 games that mean the most to me, the 10 favorite games ever. When I look at them now, not just at the time, it would be probably a different list. I'm just like, these are the best games, and in a condensed form, the best game experience I've ever had in a vacuum. It'd probably be a slightly different list, pretty similar, but maybe a slightly different list, just in terms of ordering. But the 10 games here will probably be the same. They'll just be ordered differently. However, the way I thought about it, I was like, no, this is my 10 favorite games. The games that mean the most to me. Not only the best games, but my favorite games. So anyway, without blabbering on, without further ado, here's my biased perspective on the 10 best games, my 10 favorite games of all time. At number 10 is Horizon Zero Dawn. Now, Horizon came out in 2017, PlayStation exclusive, and took me completely by surprise. I'd seen trailers for this game and it looked like some weird post-apocalyptic game with robot dinosaurs. And I just thought, yeah, no, I'll give that a skip. Until I heard Colin Moriarty give his review on it, and I was like, holy shit, I trust his opinion on games, especially when he's raving about it this much. It's definitely worth checking out, and I did. And it's one of the best games I've ever played. And the experience of playing it. Now, I'm not a big post-apocalyptic fan in any genre, especially if you're going zombies. But in terms of Horizon, what it gave you wasn't just a really interesting world and story, but the character of Aloy and that finding yourself, that coming-of-age story was so relatable and so beautiful as well, executed in this world that I wanted to know more about, that I wanted to explore. There's so much mystery to it, and it's not often in games there's all these mysteries about them anymore. So with this game, it was a whole new experience, a whole new world, and I absolutely adored it from beginning to end. Its DLCs included. I platinumed the game, and I absolutely cannot wait for a sequel to come out because I want to know more about this world. I want to know more about Aloy's story and the stories of this world of Horizon Zero Dawn. So that's why, of course, it has to be in my top 10 list, because without it in the list, I won't be all set. Coming in at number 9 is Uncharted 4. Now, I hadn't played any of the Uncharted games until I got a PlayStation 4 because I didn't have a PlayStation 3. And I played all the Uncharted games, as in Uncharted 1, 2, 3, and 4, up until that point, in 2016 in a 2-week period. So I played the entire franchise, at least in terms of the Drake games, back to back to back to back. And it was amazing. It's not something I've done. I can't even recall another time where I've binged a whole series of games in a short period of time. Sometimes I can pick up a franchise and maybe there's 2 games of it out leading up to another one, but I've never had gotten to experience a whole story in its entirety from beginning to end that I had no idea about. And it's an amazing story. The Uncharted games as a whole are so amazing to me, having a twist on real history, a twist on these myths as well, and connecting them to these amazing cast of characters, connecting them with Sully and Elena and obviously Nate. Like, these characters I grew so attached to in such a short period of time, from the first game all the way to the 4th game, where I was crying playing Uncharted 4 with these emotional moments. They didn't have to do a lot with these characters to get me emotional because I was already so invested in their story and we'd come so far. So to me, when I put Uncharted 4 as number 9, it's really in some ways placing the whole franchise in that, because Uncharted 4 was the perfect culmination of this journey we've been on with these characters. So it meant so much at that point. and to have experienced that in such a short time made a huge impact on me. And I look forward to seeing if and where they go with the Uncharted series in the future. So, of course, Uncharted 4 in and of itself was incredible with what Naughty Dog did with their gameplay, with their engine. The graphics looked amazing. The acting was second to none, one of the best performed games of all time. And just an absolute pleasure to have gotten to experience all those 4 games back to back to back. And Uncharted 4 to me is the best of them all and my favorite and has to go on this list. At number 8 is Halo Combat Evolved. Halo 1 is childhood to me. I grew up playing Halo, and Halo 1, my first experience with Halo back in 2001. I was just a kid. I'd go to my mates' houses so I could play, because I only had a PlayStation 2. I didn't have an Xbox, so I would always go to my cousin's place or my mate's place so I could play Halo. And we'd sit there and just laugh our asses off playing multiplayer together or playing through the campaign. And the story in of itself was so, like Horizon, mysterious. And as a kid, it was that first ever game story I'd experienced. That was mysterious. I had really no idea, especially as a kid, what was going on. What the hell's a Forerunner? Like, what is happening? What's a Halo ring? And having to try to grasp that story was really special. And the gameplay in itself is amazing, and it revolutionized the first-person shooter. So Halo 1 to me isn't just, of course, looking back at it now and knowing what I know about Halo, it's not just an amazing story, it wasn't just a great start, it wasn't just Master Chief, a character I love, it's childhood. It's memories that game brought to me with being around friends. So that's what that game means to me, and it has to be on the list. It's my favorite Halo, and it, of course, being Halo, needs to be in my top 10. At number 7 is Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. The second Ezio game, my favorite Assassin's Creed game. And of course, it had to be an Assassin's Creed game on this list. And the Ezio trilogy is my favorite trilogy of games. Ezio is my favorite character in video games. So this is prime Ezio. It's my favorite setting in any Assassin's Creed game. In Renaissance Rome, you get the best character at peak form, and the gameplay was that perfect culmination. So Assassin's Creed 2 is just what a masterpiece. And Brotherhood to me was just like a level up. It was Assassin's Creed 2 leveled up. Assassin's Creed 2 on steroids. After Assassin's Creed 2, I thought, well, that's the end of Ezio. That's the end, that's it. But getting to experience the character again and know that his story is ongoing and even more important than we first thought, it just continued to develop who was already my favorite video game character even further and cement that for me. And to then go on and have the trilogy, of course, was amazing. I love the story of Brotherhood, I love the world of Brotherhood, I love the gameplay mechanics of Brotherhood. It's my favorite of the Assassin's Creed franchise, and of course having my favorite character cements it, and it has to be in the top 10 list of my favorite games. Coming in at number 6 is Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead, I'd played Red Dead Revolver, and always thought it was a really fun game on the PS2. And when Red Dead Redemption came out and seeing all the gameplay trailers and mini documentaries Rockstar were putting out pre-release, I was like, holy shit, this is the most realistic game of all time. And then getting to play it, I was just excited to play this amazingly immersive, realistic cowboy game. But what I actually got was one of the best stories, and up until that point, the best story in a video game I'd ever experienced, of John Marston's story of redemption. But I also got everything I'd hoped for, which was the most immersive game I'd ever played up until that point. The most immersive story, cowboy world. It taught me so much about how games can be and what a real care into a game can achieve, especially with a company as great as Rockstar Games is. And of course, I don't think I'd ever cried in a video game up until that point. And to experience John Marston and have real risks taken, to see a game take risks, which Red Dead Redemption did, especially with its ending, and where John Marston went and how his story wrapped up, I'd never seen anything like it, and until the second Red Dead, you really hadn't seen anything like it since. So Red Dead Redemption was a trailblazing game and changed the gaming industry for the better in almost every way. So what a game, what a story, had to be on the list. At number 5 is The Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim. Skyrim for 7 years to me was the best game I've ever played. It was the most in-depth game. I love fantasy, I love role-playing games, and the world it built of Tamriel was unparalleled. I hadn't played an Elder Scrolls before this, so I got to really learn about the world of Tamriel that is 20 years old up until that point in real life. in terms of how it's been developed, the lore behind it. There's so much history there. I wanted to know more, and I got to experience that with all its DLCs and expansions that came out. I kept getting pulled back in and pulled back in. I'd spend 25 hours playing it, and then I'd move on to something else for a while, but then I'd start up Skyrim again, and I'd get in a hardcore phase where I'd play another 40 hours, and lo and behold, I put hundreds of hours in over long periods of time, over years, where you'd kind of have phases and phases and phases and drop back in, and it wasn't me replaying the game. I only ever had one playthrough. I just had so much to do in that game that you could jump back in and, with your character, experience more of the world, learn more about Tamriel, and I love this world. I absolutely cannot wait for Elder Scrolls 6, but the Elder Scrolls 5 in and of itself is one of the most perfect games ever played, and I'll always think of it as one of the best games to ever be made. And I don't think, or nor expect, the Elder Scrolls 6 to be able to match what Skyrim did. 2 games for me. I think it'll be Skyrim and Skyrim only going forward that changed the way I look at RPGs and really brought me in to a fantasy world that I'll forever love in video games. Coming in at number 4 is Kingdom Hearts 3. Kingdom Hearts 3 is the culmination of a franchise I've played for 18 years. I'd waited just for that game from Kingdom Hearts 2 to come out to Kingdom Hearts 3, almost 13 years between those 2 games releasing. I, had gone through so many phases of excitement and not even excited and wary and scared and forgetting about it and excited again, all in that time for Kingdom Hearts 3, and there's no way it could live up to it, right? But it did. It lived up to what I wanted. I loved the gameplay. I loved what a modern Kingdom Hearts could be with the current generation of consoles engines, the graphics, the Disney and Pixar worlds we got to experience, and they nailed it the best they ever have in terms of those worlds. And then you had the culmination story of not just Sora, but Riku and the 358/2 characters and the Birth by Sleep characters, and it nailed it all for me in terms of story. And look, of course, Kingdom Hearts 3 wasn't perfect, and maybe missed a couple little points, but to do what it did overall and achieve what it did for me with how long I've waited and how much this franchise means to me, I owe it a lot. I really do. I'm so grateful that I finally got to play Kingdom Hearts 3, and I couldn't honestly have asked for any more than it was, and it is one of the best games I've ever played in and of itself, and with Remind on top of that, it just perfectly capped it off. Kingdom Hearts 3 is a masterpiece for me, and it perfectly finished off the stories for me and wrapped up so many character moments. I love Kingdom Hearts 3. I'm so grateful for it, and that's why it's number 4 of my favorite games of all time. Coming in at number 3 is Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2, I didn't think it could be as good as it was. I didn't think it was possible, because Red Dead Redemption 1 was such an important story and meant so much to me. How can the story where you're doing a prequel beat what Red Dead Redemption 1 was? How can it beat that? And when you're not playing as John Marston, like I said before it came out on podcasts and stuff and videos, that it has to do so much specific things. I've never had a game where I'm like, it literally has to do X, Y, Z, or else it's not going to be good. But it has to do certain things, and that's a lot of criteria for a game, and I've never had a game where there was so much criteria it has to have to even be good to me, to justify itself. And even though it did exactly what it had to do, exactly what I wanted it to do, even though I was like, this is exactly what it has to do, and it is exactly that, it didn't make it any less meaningful when it happened. It was done with such fucking class. It was done with so much care. The story of Arthur Morgan, John Marston, the link between Red Dead Redemption 2 and the first game is one of the greatest connections from a prequel to a sequel I've ever seen. It feels like one long story. Red Dead Redemption 2 continued what Red Dead Redemption 1 did. It created an even more, 10 years later, immersive cowboy western experience in a game, pushed believability and realism in a game, pushed immersion in a game like I've never seen it before, and made one of the greatest games ever made. And it's so close to the number 2 game. It is just the tiniest bit off. Like, it's in 2018, I was like, is it game of the year? It's like this close. Whereas Skyrim was my favorite game of all time. I think the best game of all time, I should say. But then you had 2018, the 2 best games I've ever played. Maybe not my favorites, but the 2 best games I've ever played came out back-to-back years. And they're this neck and neck. But number 2 of my favorite game of all time is God of War. God of War, the first God of War I ever played, is God of War 4 here on the PlayStation 4. And it was, in and of itself, to me, the best game I've ever played in a vacuum. The best gaming experience I've ever had from start to finish. It just took me into a new world I'd never experienced, with the best performances of a cast I've seen in a video game. These characters I loved and cared about so much, in a world I learned to love and care about so much, and it gave me the illusion of this freedom while balancing it perfectly with a linear story, while balancing it perfectly with point to point to point with these story beats, where you go to one point and then it leads you to the next area, and then you've got to go do this, and oh, now this person wants this from you, and you've got to do this for this person. And everything just perfectly balanced with the pacing and the way the game continued to grow from the first moment you started playing the game all the way to the end. It didn't stop. You never got to a point like 20% in where it's like, okay, now you've got all the tools, now just play the game. With for what the story is. It's not, it continued to grow and give you new tools. Even post-game, there were new things and gameplay aspects that you haven't discovered yet, that you're still yet to do, that when you go on Platinum the game, you get to experience with the Valkyrie, that you get to experience with going to the different realms and completing those areas. There's more to the game from beginning to end than I've ever seen in any other game. There's more to it. It's just ever growing. And I loved the story, I loved the characters, I loved the world, I loved the gameplay mechanics. It was a fun game just to play. It was just a fun fucking game playing it, getting into a fight. It was a fun game to just slowly walk and talk and hear about the history. It was a fun game to solve puzzles in. Nothing about this game was bad. It, to me, is the only perfect game I've ever played in a vacuum of itself. That's why it's number 2, and for a long time was number 1, and many of you that know me are thinking, Tyler, what the fuck is number 1? What in the world is your favourite game of all time? Because this isn't the best games of all time, this is my favourite personal game of all time. And I had to think about it a lot, and I was moving my lists around, and I was sitting there thinking, look, these are my top 10 best games I've ever played, and favourite games. But the order changed with this one game. What's the game in 20 years I'm still going to play? I haven't played God of War again. You know, once I platinumed it. Played Red Dead Redemption a second time through, yeah, okay. But I don't really replay games anymore. It's rare. But what in 20 years will I still go back and play? What in 20 years will I go back and play and I'll make me cry when theme music hits? What game will I go back in 30 years and talk to my kids or grandkids or whatever about when I'm talking about games? I'm going to talk to them about my favourite game of all time. The game that shaped me. Ladies and gentlemen, my favourite game of all time is Kingdom Hearts 1. Kingdom Hearts 1 is my childhood. I said that about Halo 1, that it reminds me of childhood. Kingdom Hearts doesn't just remind me of childhood, it reminds me of video games, of my life. It is everything in terms of gaming to me. The story, the characters, the music, the world, or the worlds. Because it's that game that gives me so much of a challenge, especially as a kid, when you're not as good at games as you are as an adult. But the way the franchise has grown and still as important to me now at almost 25 years of age as it was when I was 7 and first played the first game. Like, it hasn't ever not been this important to me. It hasn't been ruined by future game installments. It hasn't gone downhill or changed. It's just grown as a franchise and gone certain directions. And those directions I love. I love. But it'll always be the first game that matters. It doesn't matter about the sequel. It doesn't matter about what came before it. In and of itself, as a one game, a standalone, only in and of itself game, Kingdom Hearts 1 is my favourite game of all time. I will forever play Kingdom Hearts 1. I will forever love Kingdom Hearts 1. Because even though, yeah, I play Kingdom Hearts 3 and those Disney Worlds, wow, the way they did that, better than they've ever done Disney Worlds, yeah, 100% true. But Kingdom Hearts 1, when I start a new game and I go to Traverse Town, or I go to Tarzan's World, Alice in Wonderland, Agrabah, Peter Pan, like, all these different Disney Worlds, those were the Disney Worlds that were my childhood, and they connected more to me because I had Kingdom Hearts 1, and it still matters just as much to me today as it did then. Even more so. And when I was thinking, what's my favourite game of all time? Can I put Kingdom Hearts 3 above Kingdom Hearts 1? Yeah, I guess it's a better game, but... And sure, it ended the story and it had those bigger moments, but as a game from start to finish, will I be replaying Kingdom Hearts 3 in 20 years, or will I be replaying Kingdom Hearts 1 in 20 years? And I'd argue that it's been almost 20 years since Kingdom Hearts 1 came out, and I'm still playing Kingdom Hearts 1. I'd argue that I know that I'm going to still play Kingdom Hearts 1. It's my favourite game of all time. It has to be number 1. Sure, it's not technically the best game ever, but my god, to me, for me, my number 1 favourite game ever, it's Kingdom Hearts 1. Thank you so much everybody for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know, what are your favourite games of all time? Whether it's a top 10 list, a top 5, whatever, or just your favourite game of all time. I want to know down in the comments. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And thanks again, of course, to our Patreon producers for helping me with my channel and the podcast, and as always, entertainment, my business. I couldn't do it without you guys and your support. And if you want extra content and early access to other videos, of course, head over to patreon.com/as always. Thank you all for watching once again, and I will see you all next time.